if I go back to when I first started 30 years ago, that was literally a piece of A4, a pen, bottle of Tipex correcting fluid, and an adding machine. Fast forward 20 years to probably the last 10 years. Yeah, so there really have been some sort of groundbreaking changes in that space. And I think the overriding feature for me has been the shift from traditionally slow end of day manual liquidity forecasting processes to where we are now, and where we are looking to accelerate that even further in terms of harnessing the data, the real-time data that we have available to us, and really capturing that and using it to its most benefit to organizations.
This is Liquidity Talks, a live stream and podcast series designed to share the latest trends and updates from the world of Treasury, liquidity and risk. Join us as we power up the liquidity conversation.
Hello and welcome to our latest instalment of Liquidity Talks live stream and podcast. I'm Neville Roberts, CEO and founder of Planix, the market-leading fintech focused on real-time treasury, liquidity and risk. Now, today our topic is entitled Everything You Need to Manage Cash and Liquidity in 2026, looking to the year ahead. Welcome to our audience today. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Anyone in the audience can ask a question as we run through the session today. And if you type it into the comments section, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, that'll be great. I can take these as we go, or if we have too many or we need more time, we will answer them at the end. We're running for 30 minutes today. If you ask a question, please let us know who you are, and if you possibly can, your role, so we have some context for the question. Now, today I'm joined by our guest speaker, Richard Wiltshire, who is a cash and intraday liquidity management specialist, and I can tell you that what there is to know about this topic, Richard knows it. So welcome, Richard. Would you like to give yourself a quick introduction and tell us who you are and what you do?
Certainly. Thank you, Neville. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody that's joined. I'm Richard Wiltshire. I've been involved in cash and liquidity management and probably specialised in that topic for over 30 years now. The last 18 of those was at HSBC, where I ran the cash and liquidity management function there globally. Prior to that, I was at a smaller German house. And then prior to that, some of the American houses, where majority of my experience has been in and around treasury ops and cash management. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes in those 30 years, but we'll try and focus on, I think, the more recent past and then more looking ahead. Yes.
I was going to say you must have a lot of war stories, probably most of which you can't talk about. But
absolutely do.
Time.
We need more than 30 minutes, put it like that.
Exactly. And if any of you want to get in touch with Richard, we put his email address in the comments section, because as I said, there's an awful lot in his head that we're going to touch on a bit now. But before we do, we're just going to touch on my favourite initial talking point, which is football. I know, Richard, you are a West Ham fan. I have promised not to mention anything about 2006, which I won't. But just tell us a little bit about why you support West Ham and where that's come from, and
yes, actually, so on. Well, I guess I probably didn't have a choice. My mother and father actually lived next door to each other. That's how they met. In an area of East London called Forest Gate, which is about a 1 mile walk to the old stadium, the bowling ground at Upton Park. And back in the 1950s, you could actually hear the match when there was less traffic noise. You could literally stand in their garden, apparently, and listen to the game. So, yeah, for my sins, I've been a long-suffering West Ham fan. Apart from winning the World Cup in 1966 and being champions of Europe, it's been a pretty barren experience, and I'm now subjecting my son to a season ticket, much to his dissatisfaction.
As he should do. Well, it's Christmas jumper day today, and you'd be glad I'm wearing mine, and I have the LFC badge well and truly planted for today. But try and ignore that as we talk. Right, let's get on to the topic today. So, cash and liquidity management. Probably a good way to start here is, what's your opinion, Richard? You've been in this for 30 years, but what are biggest changes that you've seen been happening, say, over the last 10 years plus?
Sure. So if I go back to when I first started 30 years ago, that was literally a piece of A4, a pen, bottle of Tipex correcting fluid, and an adding machine. Fast forward 20 years to probably the last 10 years. Yeah, so there really have been some sort of groundbreaking changes in that space. And I think the overriding feature for me has been the shift from traditionally slow end of day manual liquidity forecasting processes to where we are now, and where we are looking to accelerate that even further in terms of harnessing the data, the real-time data that we have available to us, and really capturing that and using it to its most benefit to organizations. So I think there's probably three main areas. Typically end of day batch processes, you are reactive, and by the time you've got that information, it's too late. You spend your day as a cash manager building a forecast without visibility of what's actually going on in the real world, and you sit there thinking, great, I've got all my ins, all my outs, and I'm projecting to be with a very small positive balance. That's brilliant. That's exactly where we want to be. And you don't know how accurate you've been until you come in the next morning and you get your bank statement in and you find out that actually you weren't quite as accurate as you'd hoped to be. So moving forward to real-time data and being able to capture that information now, we have the capabilities in a lot of organizations to do real-time intraday reconciliations of your expected flows against actual settlement flows. And that removes a lot of the ambiguity that a cash manager and liquidity manager will have around what's my position going to be. And it allows you to focus on exceptions. And I think typically as you approach the funding cutoff times, where typically liquidity in the markets can become more scarce and by therefore default becomes more expensive for banks to access. You have that ability to just focus on the exceptions, transactions that are still unsettled at that point, and that's really, I think, where you get the most benefit from that. And I think probably the other single biggest change has been the amount of regulatory focus that's been on intraday liquidity. I would imagine many of the audience were around in 2008 in the industry, or if they weren't, they're certainly very much aware of it. I think that was an enormous catalyst for regulation to come in to prevent a repeat of that on a global scale. The old adage of too big to fail was proven not to be true.
Sure. So it's really this shift or this journey. It's really this shift, Richard, this journey of the last 10 years of manual processing, you say pen, paper, then to Excel, to batch processing, intraday, and now real time. And as you run along that journey, the adoption of technology, that's what's really changed, I would presume.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And there are regulations, formal regulations that underpin that. And depending on the scale of the organization, the regulatory expectation is going to be, obviously will differ from organization to organization, but that there is still that underlying expectation that banks and financial institutions will at least have a decent idea of what their liquidity profile looks like throughout the day.
Yeah, and so, what role has the global regulator played? Because obviously they're in every country, region, but shaping the liquidity practices, influencing technology take-up, but also in your role in HSBC, you must have seen many countries, and just give us a flavour of how stringent they were in various regions versus other. Was it consistent or did it vary?
No, actually, it was very inconsistent, and I think that was part of the challenge, Neville. With an organisation with such a broad footprint as HSBC, trying to build a global operating model and trying to secure funding, for example, to roll out a global scalable operating model with the underlying tech stacks, is challenging where you've got disparate adoption across the organisation. So you had in the UK, I think the PRA were very much on the front foot. And a lot of the BCBS 248 guidelines, for example, were actually penned by members of the PRA team. And then you saw really Switzerland, India, Singapore. They were very, very keen in terms of being early adopters, where some of the more established markets, I think the Fed were very much kind of playing a bit of a waiting game and watching to see how the adoption was taken in other markets before making sort of fundamental changes.
Sure. And what about if you think about what's on topic right now, but faster payment systems or instant payment platforms, real-time Treasury settlement as well. How's that changed Treasury operations and also the liquidity risk management point of views as well?
It's actually been very challenging. Typically, settlement is instantaneous. So, and a lot of it, you would not have prior warning of any pending flows coming through. It's literally, you'll see a balance and then it instantly changes in front of your eyes. And that's due to a client instructing an instantaneous payment through whatever channel they're connecting to your systems with. And that requires the liquidity management teams to be able to make instant decisions using that real-time data, to be able to react to that and protect the integrity of the bank's liquidity management processes. Like I said earlier, I think as you approach your cut-off time, we know the challenges that liquidity managers face in terms of trying to get the most accurate forecast. You can't forecast as accurately if you've got instantaneous payments. And it also shifts to a 24/7 model as well now. Banks are having to effectively hold liquidity buffers over a weekend without having any access to central banks, for example, to be able to actually fund themselves efficiently and cost effectively while still being able to offer the 24/7 instantaneous payment channels. And then coupled with that, you have to have operational resilience. You have to have an appropriate risk and control framework around that. So it has been very, very much a challenge, and I think it will continue to be so.
Yeah, I was just thinking then when we have some of our customers who see the screens for the first time, they actually say, do they want real time? And they say, could you just allow me to refresh when I want? Because otherwise the numbers keep moving all the time. And it was something at first we never really thought through, but actually you're right. You just need to see one set of numbers. And if you want to change them, fine, you can do an update. But we did actually see that kind of an unintended consequence. But we do have some questions, Richard. One from Dan Feeney. Welcome, Dan. This is a nice opener for you, Richard. Seems programmable stablecoins transacting a chain using fully agentic AI orchestration is technically ready. How will corporate bankers adopt?
That's a very good question, Dan. I think ultimately corporate bankers will have no other option but to adopt. I think they will need to be able to sell the merits of being able to adopt this to the internal teams that are holding that budget to enable their requisite system platforms to be able to adopt this. The digital assets, we know that they are becoming more and more prevalent. They are the future. And I think if we look beyond maybe 2026, they will sit very much alongside cash. And that's what a cash and liquidity manager will be. It will be a cash and digital asset liquidity manager. So I think whilst it's to an extent very much in its infancy, there will be no option but to be able to embrace that and incorporate that into their operating models.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And another question here from Olaf Ranson. Welcome, Olaf, and you'll be glad to know, Olaf, I'm wearing my Christmas LSC jumper today because he is, I know, a big Liverpool fan, and the shirt on the wall. Olaf says, has the evolution of tech capabilities led to Treasury organisations being able to monitor what is settled versus what they expect to settle across both cash and securities?
Yes, I think it has. And as I've alluded to previously, I think depending on the scale of particular organisations, they will have varying levels of mature technology capabilities. I'm sure there are organisations out there that are still using Excel, and it has a place. It still has a place where it suits that particular organisation. But but in being able to harness that information and being able to react to it and utilize it instantly, I think that is really where the key to that is. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. You're right. I mean, we still see spreadsheets. I don't think we're seeing pen and paper. We see spreadsheets. I think we see banks trying to do just enough, but also there's some leaders out there that want to do more. But I could answer that question really quickly and say yes, absolutely, and speak to us later. But I won't do that. If we move on and talk about data, right? Because this is always key. What challenges do organizations face, do you think, with data quality, systems integration, why this is now central to effective real-time liquidity management?
Sure. I think probably the easiest way to describe it is that if you have poor data, then you're going to make poor decisions, quite simply. If you've got incomplete data or latent data, you're acting and making decisions upon data that is literally positions that are literally redundant at that point. And I have seen this, not just at HSBC, but at other organizations that I've worked at, where because of that latency, you think you've given an accurate forecast to your Treasury desk, and 10 minutes later, they're having to go back into the market to access liquidity to trade in the opposite direction. And that's expensive. It's inefficient and it's expensive. So I think being able to have good quality data that is genuinely real time, and by that I mean instantaneous, even a minute can be too late. Particularly as you approach cutoff times. And I think the way that systems are set up as well, if you have fragmented infrastructure, you've got systems that don't talk to each other quickly enough or completely enough. And without that, you're going to have inaccurate forecasting. And whilst that has a P&L impact, it also has wider impacts on buffer calculations, on regulatory reporting. It will be visible in your ILAPs, for example. So regulators will demand to see that information and will make decisions and potential penalties in terms of banks having to hold additional capital off the back of that. So data quality, I would say, and completeness is the biggest challenge and arguably the most important challenge to overcome.
Yeah, I think you're right. From a timely basis point of view, regulators were hearing more and more are wanting to know that you had the right data at the right time. You had control in the moment something happened, especially when there's stress. So even a minute out can be too long, especially if you're a large bank. And it's about quality. It's about getting that data through the platforms and systems quickly and not having to go through the fragmented silos as well. So that's what we're hearing too. Okay.
Definitely. Definitely.
Let's move on to AI. It's always a hot topic, but AI automation, is it a nice to have? Is it business imperative? And also, how far do you go? We get a lot of questions about can I fully automate my sweeps using AI, and there's no human intervention at all. And we think maybe that's a bit too far. Maybe you do want some checks, but where do you think that sits? Is it important, and how far should you go?
I think they need to be separated. Ignoring the fact for a moment that AI is a form of automation, but I think where we're talking about automation in the more traditional terms, it's absolutely essential. In my view, we are past the position where we can do things completely manually. I say, unless your volume of throughput and your value of throughput is very low, no institution can operate without automation now. But it also addresses and allows you to focus resources into more value-add tasks. Use automation for repetitive tasks, reconciliations, exception management, reporting, those types of tasks. They can be automated very, very simply. moving on to AI, it has a place, but I think we have to be very, very careful with how much it is adopted right now. It will be the future, in my opinion, but I think we have to remember that ultimately the technology learns by its mistakes and by that user interaction correcting it. And over time, it starts to retrain itself, and it will become more and more accurate, and it can be more predictive and ultimately support teams much more effectively. And it can be used to understand and point out patterns or potential road bumps in the road that the end user may not be aware of at that point in time because they're focusing on another task. So it definitely has a place. I think using it for such activities as sweeps between main and sub nostros, for example, I think that can be done. Automated sweeps do exist in a number of organizations, as long as you've got the appropriate criteria and you've set your target balances and your maximum sweep sizes, and being able to break payments down into manageable sizes. So you wouldn't sweep $1 billion in one shape, for example. You would want to break that down into smaller pieces so that you don't create liquidity blockages. So that exists today. I think AI will move that forwards to being able to predict what you might need and get ahead of the game and start to repatriate and centralize where you might have idle liquidity into another account where it may be needed within the next 15 minutes, for example, to even so that an account is appropriately funded at the point that an expected payment comes through at a due time each day.
Yeah, we did an exercise on AI in the summer around, all launching to AI, which we launched a month or two ago. We did an exercise of talking to customers, the industry around not just providing AI for AI's sake, but where's the real value points, but also how does it interact with the users as well. So if a user expects an automation point at some stage, then you could probably introduce AI. If there's a big part of the value chain, you can automate as well. But it's not just about where can I apply it. It does have to be worked out with how a user works and processes as well. And some are learning about how you can use it as well. So I don't think it's just the first shot is the one that's going to work. It absolutely evolves into what comes next, and it's an iterative program. But you're right; it's absolutely here to stay. And we see. I got a question asked to me yesterday by a European bank, and because their faster payments platforms have no limit, we're starting to see faster, instant payments of like 100 million euros plus. And can we use AI to help me with that, because I've got 15 seconds or less to be able to analyze that and check. So I don't have much time. So we're starting to get into those things as well. So I think you have to work with customers, banks, and also what AI can do to get the right answer for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's think about teams, right? Teams today, or 10 years ago, teams today, and teams of the future. But what kind of skill sets do you think the Treasury liquidity teams, funding teams, they need today to operate efficiently in today and tomorrow's world versus what they probably have now? And is that just a training exercise? Is it next generation? Is it half person, half AI? What's the skills you need?
Yes. I think it's probably all of those, to be quite honest. I think ultimately you have to begin with a very strong foundation of understanding the role that cash and liquidity management has in a settlement cycle and the importance of it to organizations. I'm slightly biased, but I would argue that along with collateral management, cash management is the most vital task and process with any operations function. Any other asset class process can have controls up to their eyeballs. But if an account isn't adequately funded, those trades won't settle, quite simply. And therefore, it is fundamental. And I think the teams of today have to understand the settlement cycle of a variety of different products and asset classes, of different payment channels, the nuances there are in all of the global markets and local payment systems. You almost have to have kind of like an encyclopedic brain that is built up over years to understand what it is you need to do. And more importantly, when something doesn't happen that you expect it to, or the opposite, where something happens and you haven't expected it to, being able to understand and interpret that very, very quickly and make the right decision very, very quickly is fundamental. So that will always be required. On top of that, we have to be able to enhance the capabilities and really equip those teams with the relevant IT infrastructure and data quality and visibility and timeliness to enable them to do their jobs properly. And I think one thing that I'm a big advocate of is having a continuous improvement mindset. Don't just accept the status quo. Don't just sit there and be trained on this is how we've always done it and this is how we're always going to do it. If something doesn't look right, challenge it. And that's the only way processes will change. I think having held positions from over my career, from being at the coalface managing an account to having a global role managing a process, the further you get away from actually doing the role, the less visibility and understanding you have of some of the challenges that the people doing the roles face. And therefore it's vital for that to be run up the chain as quickly as possible. And being adaptable, being open to adopting new technology is imperative.
So when organizations look at their resources right now and they're thinking about how they bridge that gap to the new world in terms of skills, it's not just about upskilling these people. It's about, because it's not just industry experience you need. You're going to have hybrid talent. You're going to have to understand finance, technology, data, all of those things, and maybe leveraging partnerships too. But it's not just a simple upskilling exercise, I would presume. It's a lot more than that.
Oh, very much so. I think the key word that you've just mentioned there, Neville, is hybrid.
Yeah.
I think the teams of today and the future will be a combination of your traditional SMEs, along with data analysts, along with automation experts that can work kind of hand in hand as a product, and have the concept of a product owner, so somebody that is really responsible for the ongoing maintenance and development of that process roadmap to ensure that it's scalable, it's agile, you can react quickly to market events, regulatory changes, and really be able to leverage all of those skills, and allowing people to, although they have 3 different skill sets in that example, all being able to talk the same language. So the expert can explain to the automation expert exactly what they need to see and why they need to see it. And the data analyst can then supplement that by ensuring that the data and the output from all of that is what the expert needs and is what the automation expert has developed for them.
No, sure. Look, there's a lot more questions I could ask Richard, and would love to ask, but we're almost running out of time, or we're almost run out of time. But I always end with this question, which is, if you have one key takeaway for the listeners today, what would it be?
I think, in my opinion, and I'm at risk of repeating myself here, I think that having that subject matter expertise, it's always going to be at the foundation of liquidity management. That's never going to go away. But I think the future really belongs to organizations that are able to combine that experience and partner that with digital intelligence, embrace innovation, use the real-time data that we've got available to us now, leverage AI, albeit cautiously now, but as it develops and becomes more efficient and safer for us to use, really embrace that, have agile processes, and ultimately that will enable organizations to manage their liquidity much more effectively. And as a result of that, they reduce their risk profile and reduce costs, which can be very key when we're talking about shareholder value. So I think that's probably how I would summarize.
Perfect. Great advice. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. So thank you very much, Richard, for joining us today and sharing your views.
My
If
pleasure.
anyone asks any questions after the event, please do so either through the comments, or you can also email us and we will answer them for you later. That concludes our latest Liquidity Talks live stream and podcast. We'll put the podcast on LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple Music, and other media outlets and streaming services very soon. Thank you very much. Look out for our next podcast, which is going to be early in the new year. My name is Neville Roberts. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Liquidity Talks. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments and industry opinion from the world of Treasury, liquidity and risk.